He sat at the corner table of the quiet restaurant, the soft hum of conversation and clinking glasses filling the air around him. A candle flickered between the two empty wine glasses, casting small shadows that danced across the white tablecloth. He checked his watch again. 7:58. She was 2 minutes late. Not that it mattered, he told himself. He wasn't nervous. Not really. He adjusted his cufflinks, straightened his collar, and glanced toward the entrance for the 10th time. Blind dates weren't his thing. He'd built a life that revolved around control, schedules, and predictability. Letting someone unknown into his carefully measured evening felt risky. But his best friend, Adam, had been relentless. You work too much, man. You need to meet someone who'll surprise you. He sighed at the memory, swirling the water in his glass. Maybe this was a mistake. The restaurant was too fancy, too quiet. Every laugh, every clink of a fork felt magnified. He took out his phone, scrolling absently, trying not to notice how alone he looked. Then, the door opened. A woman stepped inside, the golden light from the chandelier glinting against her dark hair. She wasn't what he expected. There was something effortlessly graceful about her, something that made the noise of the room fade for a second. She looked around, eyes searching, until they landed on him. The smallest smile curved her lips, gentle but knowing, like she'd been waiting for this moment longer than he could imagine. His breath hitched. There was something strangely familiar about her eyes, the way she carried herself. She approached the table, each step measured, confident, and yet her gaze held a quiet vulnerability. When she finally stood before him, she smiled softly. "Hi," she said, her voice calm but trembling at the edges. He stood, offering a polite smile. "Hi, you must be." Before he could finish, she tilted her head slightly, studying him in silence. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't remember me, do you?" The words hit him harder than expected. His mind went blank for a moment, searching, grasping for a memory that hovered just out of reach. He looked at her again. Really looked, and for the first time that night, his heart began to race. He blinked, trying to hide the confusion flickering across his face. "I'm sorry," he said, forcing a small laugh. "Have we met before?" The woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked down, tracing the rim of her wine glass with a fingertip. When she finally lifted her gaze, her eyes held a quiet sadness that made his chest tighten. "High school," she said softly. "You once gave me your umbrella in the rain. You probably don't even remember doing it. But I never forgot." He froze. The image that had been tugging at the edges of his memory suddenly sharpened. A narrow street behind their old school, rain pouring down in silver sheets, a girl huddled under a broken umbrella. He'd stopped, handed her his, and jogged off without thinking twice, just a small act of kindness on his way home. He never even learned her name. His voice came out softer than he meant it to. "That was you." She smiled faintly, a little shy, a little wistful. "Yes, that was me. You probably don't remember, but you told me something that day." He frowned, trying to recall. "What did I say?" She leaned back, eyes distant as if replaying the memory. "It's just rain. It'll stop eventually." She gave a quiet laugh. "It sounds silly now, but I was going through a lot back then. You had no idea, but those words, they stuck with me." He didn't know what to say. He remembered being that boy, awkward, quiet, always trying to do the right thing. He never imagined something so small could leave such a lasting mark on someone else. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I didn't recognize you. You've changed." She nodded. "So have you." The waiter appeared, breaking the tension as he poured wine into their glasses. The woman thanked him with a smile, then turned back to her date. "You were always kind," she said quietly. "Even when you didn't notice anyone noticing you." He chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, I guess I'm glad I made a good impression back then." Her smile deepened, but her eyes told a different story, one filled with memories he couldn't see. As they began to talk, the awkwardness faded. They shared stories about life, work, the cities they'd lived in. Laughter began to replace the tension, and he found himself relaxing, drawn to her warmth and calm presence. Yet, every so often, when she looked at him, there was a flicker, something unreadable in her expression. Not just nostalgia, but something heavier. As though behind her smile lay a truth she wasn't quite ready to tell. And though he didn't know it yet, this wasn't a chance meeting at all. It was a reunion fate had quietly been arranging for years. Their conversation flowed more easily now, like a gentle stream that had found its rhythm. The initial awkwardness faded, replaced by a growing comfort neither of them expected. Around them, the restaurant had taken on a soft glow, couples leaning closer over candlelight, waiters moving quietly between tables, jazz humming faintly from hidden speakers. She was easy to talk to, open, funny, grounded in a way that drew him in. He found himself laughing more than he had in months. When she talked, she had a way of making even ordinary things sound alive. Her job at a publishing house, her obsession with late-night baking, how she once tried to adopt a stray cat that turned out to belong to her neighbor. He listened, genuinely interested, his eyes catching on the way her face lit up when she spoke. "You always did that," she said suddenly, mid-laugh. "Did what?" he asked, grinning. "Listen like what I'm saying actually matters." He blinked. "Well, it does." Her smile faltered for a heartbeat before returning, gentler this time. "You used to listen like that back then too. When no one else did." A strange warmth spread through his chest. He couldn't remember ever having real conversations with her in school, but maybe she remembered things differently, moments he'd overlooked that had meant more to her than he realized. They talked about the past, teachers they both hated, the broken vending machine that ate everyone's coins, the festivals in the school courtyard. She laughed when he confessed he used to hide in the library during lunch breaks. "I used to see you there," she said, sitting by the window, pretending not to notice when people stared. He raised an eyebrow. "You were watching me." Her cheeks flushed slightly. "Maybe a little." She laughed again, the sound soft but real. "You were different, not like the others." As she said it, her expression softened with something unspoken, admiration tinged with melancholy. For a moment, he thought he saw her eyes glisten under the candlelight, but when he blinked, it was gone. By the time dessert arrived, a shared slice of chocolate cake, he had almost forgotten this had started as a blind date. There was an invisible thread between them now, woven from half-remembered moments and rediscovered familiarity. He felt as if he'd known her all his life, though he'd only just begun to see her clearly. And yet, something in her tone, each word weighed, each smile carrying a trace of sorrow, made him realize there was still a part of her he didn't understand. When she reached for her glass, her hand brushed his, and she froze. Her gaze lifted to meet his, steady but trembling. "You really don't remember everything, do you?" she said quietly. The question lingered in the air, heavy and fragile. He frowned, confused, but before he could answer, she looked away, out the window, into the rain that had begun to fall again. The same kind of rain from that night so many years ago. The rain had picked up by the time they stepped outside. Streetlights shimmered through the drizzle, turning the wet pavement into a patchwork of gold and silver reflections. He held the restaurant door open for her, and she smiled in thanks before stepping under the awning. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and blooming jasmine from somewhere nearby. He followed her out, hands tucked into his coat pockets. For a moment, they both stood there silently, watching the rain fall in steady curtains. It felt strangely familiar, like stepping into an old photograph neither of them remembered posing for. He turned to her, searching for something to say that wouldn't break the fragile quiet. "It's funny," he said finally, "how the weather's exactly like the night we met." She glanced at him, a wistful smile forming. "I was thinking the same thing." Then, after a pause, "Maybe it's the universe reminding you." "Reminding me," he echoed. "That you were there," she said softly. "That night, that moment, it wasn't just rain to me." He frowned, brow furrowing. "You keep saying that. What do you mean?" She hesitated, eyes flicking down to the puddles at her feet. The soft light painted her face in shades of memory and melancholy. When she finally looked up, her voice trembled just slightly. "You didn't just give me your umbrella that night," she said. "You stayed. You don't remember, do you?" He opened his mouth, but no words came. Flashes of memory began to stir, half-formed images, sounds muffled by rain. A girl crying on the curb. His hand on her shoulder. A quiet promise. "You're not alone. It'll stop eventually." His chest tightened. You were crying, he said slowly, almost to himself. I stayed with you. She nodded, eyes shining. You did. Everyone else walked by, but you stopped. I'd been ready to end everything that night. I didn't think anyone would notice if I disappeared. She swallowed hard. But you noticed. You handed me your umbrella, told me the rain would stop, and for the first time in months, I believed you. He stared at her, speechless. The world seemed to narrow around them. The rain, the streetlight, her trembling voice. I never forgot that, she continued. It changed everything. You saved me without even knowing it. His throat went dry. The gravity of her words settled deep in his chest, heavy but warm. I didn't know, he whispered. I just thought I was doing something small. Sometimes small things aren't small to the person who needs them most, she said gently. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain softened, turning into a mist that hung in the glow of the lamps. Finally, she stepped closer, her voice almost lost in the hush of the night. I've been waiting years to thank you, she said. Not just for that night, but for the life that came after. He felt his heart swell, his voice unsteady when he replied. You don't have to thank me. She smiled faintly. Maybe not, but I wanted to find you. To remind you that what you did mattered. As she turned to leave, her car headlights cut through the mist, glowing like ghosts in the rain. He stood frozen, watching her silhouette fade as she opened the door. When she drove away, he remained under the awning, the memory of her words echoing louder than the rain. It wasn't just a blind date. It was a circle completed, a reminder that sometimes, a single act of kindness can ripple through time, and find its way back to you when you least expect it.